Well, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome you all to the second webinar organized by the UNESCO Iberoamerican AI Business Council. This second webinar will focus on bias in AI systems and how large corporations like Microsoft and Telefonica take a principled approach to mitigate risks associated with AI bias. And for that purpose, we are honored to count with the participation of Hannah Wallach from Microsoft and Elena Hill from Telefonica. And in addition to these approaches, Nazat Sanchez-P from INREA Chile and the Chilean Association of Information Technology Companies will join to present their perspective and case study on gender-related issues in AI systems. And also, last but not least, our dear Alessandra Sala will share the goals of the recently launched Women for Ethical AI platform, and as she is the co-chair of the space jointly with our dear Assistant Director General, Gabriela Ramos. We all know that women's rights across the world are under threat. Some women are not allowed to go to school, some are dying because of the way they dress, many others live a life of violence at the hands of family members or intimate partners. And the field of AI is not an exception at all of all these things. Globally, only 22% of AI professionals worldwide are women. Only 13% of AI authors are women. Only 18% of key speakers in AI field are women. And only 12% of engineering students are women. Also globally, women make up less than 25% of AI specialists, 14% of people working in cloud computing, and 20% of engineering. 80% of all AI development teams are 100% composed by men. And we were talking about before the starting of this webinar. But apart from horizontal segregation, some women also experience face glass ceilings that result in vertical gender segregation. Only 1 in every 4 leadership positions in tech industries is occupied by a woman. In this context, AI ethics can and must contribute to encourage the development and implementation of gender-inclusive strategies. And in this respect, the recommendation on the ethics of AI adopted in November of 2021 by a standing ovation at the General Conference of UNESCO is the first and only document that has a special chapter on gender and AI. It aims, and we are really proud of it, it aims to set global standards addressing these challenges, in particular by calling for the collection of gender disaggregated data and setting out key approaches and actions to ensure that the AI ecosystems overcome existing disparities and encourage female participation and engagement. Introducing a strong chapter in the recommendation on the ethics of AI was a major step towards addressing gender gaps and challenges in the digital world, and we have to recognize our fight of our boss, Gabriela Ramos, who really fought really hard in order to have this chapter into the recommendation. With our readiness assessment tool that we are developing now, we hope to equip countries with practical actions plans too. We're already implementing the gender chapter of the recommendation by introducing gender aspects in AI governmental strategies. And we made another step because we launched the Women for Ethical AI platform to enhance the impact of this normative framework to fight against gender bias in algorithms and break the mood. The Women for Ethical AI platform aims to contribute to the realization of the UNESCO recommendation with a specific focus on gender diversity and empowerment. And that's why I will now give the floor to my dear Alessandra to talk a little bit more about it and the current state of bias and gender inequality in AI. So my dear Alessandra, with this short introduction, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eleonora. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm the Senior Director of AI and Data Science at Shutterstock, the Global President of Women in AI, and I'm honored to co-chair this new platform of Women for Ethical AI. But before we delve into what this platform is, let's spend a couple of words on bias and gender inequalities. Bias is ingrained in the data used for training AI system, and therefore this system unintentionally perpetuate social inequalities, and they amplify the disparity faced by women, marginalized communities, and gender minorities. Intricate challenges lie not only in the identification and mitigation of biases, but also in the necessity to foster diversity and inclusion in the development and the deployment of AI technology. I'm a practitioner with more than 15 years as a researcher in the field, and I really care about how we develop those systems. Let me try to quickly show you a couple of slides that may help us to make this point. So if I can launch this presentation, I hope you see, we know we have unsolved inequality. We have a target. We are trying to progress towards equality, but we know women are taking so much more extra care work at home and in society. And how much are we progressing towards our goal? So you may think, Halle, haven't you heard that we are all hiring with diversity? Yes, I heard, and indeed I'm trying to do it too. If we look at internship position and entry-level position for women participation in the tech industry, it may look like we are above 30%. But as Eleonora just said, there is a cap ceiling. Only 50% of those women reach VP position, and only 5 CEOs in the top 3,000 US companies. What does that mean? That the stakeholders and those that really take decision are those people taking decision with gender agenda in mind and diversity. But even worse, let's take a step back. Let's look at the G7 annual report on gender equality and what we see in the last 11 years. Number between men workforce and women workforce hasn't changed much. In EU, in G7 country, OECD countries, those numbers are not changing. And if we look at those women and girls that we want to bring in the education programs in the last few years, we are still around 30%. And if we look at this year, the 2023 AI Index report from Stanford, 78.7% of PhD candidates in US were men. And therefore, are we really changing the status quo? So now let me come back and say, what are we doing? In 2021, as Eleonora said, UNESCO launched the recommendation of ethics in AI, which today it becomes an instrumental framework to promote larger participation of women in the field of AI, because as we just said, we need it. By embracing a multidimensional perspective and employing rigorous ethical framework, we can engender an AI landscape that not only rectify those biases that we are perpetuating in our society, but also becomes a catalyst for transformative social changing, empowering individuals of all gender to strive in a more just and inclusive world. Few months ago, in March, the 6th of March this year, UNESCO launched the Women for Ethical AI platform, was established with the aim to contribute to the realization of the gender chapter of the recommendation on ethical AI. This platform has a specific focus on gender diversity in order to ensure that the AI ecosystem overcomes existing disparity, encourage female participation, entrepreneurship, and engagement in this field. So the Women for Ethical AI platform consists of professional and committed female experts in AI that will lead a set of activities to promote the gender diversity agenda. And specifically, let me share with you a couple of things that we have in our agenda. Promote gender diversity at institutional level to support countries around the world to establish country-specific framework to promote responsible AI development and deployment. Contribute to the establishment of the readiness assessment methodology and the ethical impact assessment. So we can actually quantify the readiness and the ethical approach of the AI system that we all use every day. This is my favorite. Lead the knowledge creation and the development of the UNESCO AI Observatory. The AI Observatory will develop a repository of existing issues and best practices to create a centralized view and a point of reference to responsible AI. Let me give some example of what this observatory will do. Collecting resources and evidence regarding existing AI issues we all are facing, collecting example and new ideas regarding best practices for ethical AI, operationalizing ethical AI principle, experiment with new and more equitable business model, and lead concrete approaches to incentivize the participation of girls, women, and underrepresented groups to all stages of the AI life cycle. So beyond the observatory, the Women for Ethical AI will also develop a handbook of practical guidelines for non-governmental stakeholders on how to implement the UNESCO recommendation for ethical AI. And finally, this amazing group of expert AI female participants and practitioners will continue to promote and raise awareness, advocating for the need to develop ethical AI and showcase the activities of this platform. So thank you, and I'll give it back to Eleanor, and I hope I'll have questions later.
Thank you, Alessandra. You can see why she's the co-chair of our Women for Ethical AI. Those numbers are scary, Alessandra, and we have to do something about it. And we are gonna do something about it with this platform. I now want to give the floor to our dear Nayat Sanchez-B. Thank you, Najat, for joining us and for telling us the experience from INRIA and what you're doing. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here and an honor. And the motivation of my brief presentation at the request of UNESCO is to share with you the different approaches and methods we follow in our practice, and in particular at INRIA Chile, regarding how addressing biases and ethical issues in systems that we work on, in particular with focus on gender bias. So let me just share my screen. Let me see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
It is full mode?
Excellent. Yes, it is full. Yes,
okay.
Excellent.
Perfect. So the first thing I want to start with is that I mean, it's something that is happening right now with AI. I mean, that in one hand, we see results that only 10 or 5 years ago, we would have never envisioned. And that would be possible. And right now, we see things like stable diffusion, image generation, some super powerful language models that sincerely have amazing results. And all of this, instead, we have people interested and open to use these methods, but we feel somehow that we have this growing trend of anti-concerns and worries that are permeating the whole conversation, okay? And from a certain point of view, it seems that we are getting closer to an AI winter where people walk away from AI from different concerns. And one of these main concerns have to do with the ethical and societal issues that AI can bring as a side effect. So this is really important problem. And this is also a very important concern for us at Inteligencia in general, but also for my team in particular as a research and innovation institute, right? Especially focused on developing this kind of technology. And now we are working on different aspects of AI that we have converged into a work methodology that I plan to share with you in this presentation. And so the first thing is to understand here that there's not a single bullet, silver bullet solution. Every problem is particular, but in any case, there are, I mean, shared characteristics, shared techniques that we can reduce as learning experiences. At first is to understand the data, because modern AI and machine learning heavily rely on data. Alessandra just mentioned that. It's not only the only source of knowledge, but right now the main success of this method is driven by the availability of big data sets. So the first action is to discover biases, okay, and pose a problem at the beginning in a proper way in order to avoid the future biases the moment when AI and machine learning themselves can be made by us aware. And this is an active and critical topic for us. And it's how it has to do and how to have machine learning methods that are robust against biases. And this is really hard because machine learning itself, it really learns by extracting generalities, and therefore it's very susceptible to bias. So this is, on one hand, this is not a bug, it's, well, we can see it as a feature, okay? So the problem is not where we're going to have bias or not. The thing is that if the bias that we have has a negative impact, and then of course we need to carry out a posteriori analysis of the model we have created. So we will go into a little more detail in a couple of slides, but we need to see the model in practice to understand whether and where is going to happen a negative impact, where is going to fail. You cannot do it a priori, you need to do it also a posteriori once the model is trained. And then of course, if you're going to deploy a model into a real world to be used by a lot of people, you need to keep doing this process as long as the model is available to everybody. So we need to have this lifelong assessment and understanding this concept that we call somehow under specification in AI, that is essentially to understand where the model is not going to perform correctly because, for example, the work conditions have changed. So all in all, it is important, one, addressing these issues, and this is a very important learn lesson, but the whole community, not only us, is that you need to have diversity in all senses. You already mentioned that, not only in gender, but also in national origin stages, stages in your professional careers, backgrounds. And for that, you need to have teams as diverse and as multidisciplinary as possible that can discover these situations from different perspectives. So this is more or less our recipe. Okay, I will go more in detail. So as I was saying, the first action is to address and handle ourselves in the real world based on bias and intuition and other forms of, let's say, common sense reasoning. And this is essential to how we work. And therefore, if we're going to gather data sets, in particular data sets produced by humans, it is important that we know that they are subject to human biases. I mean, AI itself is not biased, data is biased. And the problem with AI and machine learning is that they have this amplification factor of biases that can affect many more people because of this amplification, and of course extends the use and also the use in an automatic way. So if you have a system for determining if you're going to send, for example, people to jail, okay, or not, and all of a sudden you stop looking at the file and just applying this becomes very risky. And the good news is that there are methods for identifying and remove this sensitive of bias and prone information. They are not perfect, but they are there, okay? But the main issue here is that you need to identify indirect information that can be also used as a source of bias. For example, if you look after the years of one person to do a PhD, and directly this code could be related to motherhood, because normally women at the time they are doing their PhD are willing to become mothers. So this could be a subrogate indication of gender. So these kind of things are really, really hard to discover. So there's no solution here. You need to get into the problem of understand what you are doing, because every time you address the machine learning problem as a black box approach in which you use data models and apply something, I mean, this is a recipe for failure. So this is the first lesson learned, okay? Then is that it's a very good question that we can have safe algorithms, I mean ethical algorithms. And this is really hard because most of the machine learning methods, the way they learn, actually promote biases. Essentially, they're trying to create a model that reduce a global error in a given data set. So less frequent data instances are not looked after because they are infrequent and contributes less to this error. So this is like the perfect recipe for bias, because one of the characteristics of the underrepresented, let's say, communities of people is that they appear infrequently in the data sets or too frequently in the data sets. I mean, so these cases, we need to look at them very, very carefully. And there are ways of solving these issues, for example, by doing data augmentation from the very technical perspective, doing data augmentation, resampling, and all of that. And we can say that maybe there is also a different way of learning that we are actually actively working here at INRIA on how, for example, machine learning learn the way human learns. I mean, working on that, and how we can make machine learning learn the way we do. I mean, we don't need millions of photos of people, I mean, to be able to identify the face of a mother, I mean, when we are kids. You say limited numbers of example, and you are able to go from that, and this is really an active area for us. So there are different actions also on different directions that we can follow for creating these models, and this part of the work we are doing. For example, we use self-supervision to gain the most amount of information from the data sets. You have to incorporate symbolic reasoning into the model's causality and other forms of a priori information like physics-informed neural network, that essentially we should be creating models that are able to reason and therefore can be explainable and more understandable. And the other directions is try to also automate this in machine learning pipelines that no longer require an expert knowledge to deploy the systems in a correct way, okay? There is also an approach that we have followed that have been really successful and positive for us, that is to rely on other less sensitive but still important domains in which the impact of biases, even though it is important, you can say it's not immediately dramatic. I mean, so we have used these domains like climate change related problems, biology and ecology related problems, astronomy and astrophysics, and relied on these domains to create sandboxes not focus only on trying to solve particular problems of these domains, of these areas, but also to use this as a safe area where we can experiment without harming or creating side effects, not knowing that, for example, in these domains, in general, we have better governed data sets with no issues and we can use to experiment, okay? Then,
my dear,
yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt that. You have 1 more minute because we still have two more panelists.
Just to say, thank you, Leonora, for the reminder. Just to say that this is an a posteriori, evaluation that also we need to do without entering in details. I mean, this is not only a thing that you do a priori, you have to do a posteriori evaluation. And last but not least, the approach that we need to make them a more proof, more future-proof, your models. And this is really challenging. For example, there are a lot of examples in this respect, but and a lot of decisions depending of the training of your data and the directions that you do. But it's a second direction work that is just to adapt to the changing environment. And here there are many different methods that we apply from different forms of domain adaptation that allows the model, to take feedback and learn how the environment is changing to stay valid and perform. And this is the way the environment change, okay? So this is, our recipe. And just to keep in mind this reference that I'm putting here, because this is a work that a position paper that we wrote a couple of years ago that I think is still valid in the roadmap of AI, which we address many issues related to biases in the context of Latin America, but actually we can extrapolate the situation for other situations. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nayat. Thank you very much. And maybe you can share in the chat the information that you were talking about, so the papers and all the things, so the people can access to this. We jump directly to Hannah Wallach. Thank you very much, Hannah, for joining us. Nayat and Alessandra spoke about bias, and it could be great if you could then introduce us to how bias works, how it affects us. So you have the floor, and we're willing to hear you. Thank you very much for being.
Hey everyone, it's wonderful to be here today. Give me 1 second here.
You can see your, and it's perfect.
You can see them. Okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah, perfect.
I just need to find my presenter notes. I'm so sorry about this. I don't normally present in Zoom because we use Teams within Microsoft. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so sorry.
Don't worry. In the meantime, I can tell the people who are listening to us, who has joined the webinar, that you can email me if you're interested to participate in the platform. We're going to launch an open call in order for everyone to join us. But in the meantime, you can email me or Alessandra, and we will be more than happy to share information with you. Hannah, if you're ready, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and Alessandra, maybe you can also share your information if you want. So Hannah, if you're ready, we're okay.
Yep, give me 1 more second. I'm trying one more thing. Great.
Don't worry.
Can you see my slides and you see them in full screen mode?
Yeah,
perfectly.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. And I'm sorry about that little technical challenge just getting started there. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about fairness in AI systems and tell you a little bit about how we think about this topic at Microsoft. But first, before I get started, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do. So I'm a machine learning researcher by training, and at this point I've been doing machine learning for over 20 years. That said, the past 8 years or so, most of my research has been around issues of fairness, accountability, transparency, and ethics as they relate to AI and machine learning. And I'm a member of Microsoft's FATE research group, which stands for Fairness, Accountability, Transparency, and Ethics. And this group was formed in 2015 to focus on exactly these issues. So I'm also deeply involved in Microsoft's Ether committee, and Ether stands for AI, Ethics, and Effects in Engineering and Research. And I co-chair the Ether Fairness and Inclusiveness Working Group, along with Hiwat Tesfaye. And this group brings together experts in fairness and inclusiveness from across Microsoft to really address and tackle and dive into some of Microsoft's most pressing challenges in this space. But what I want to tell you about today is really how we think about fairness at Microsoft and sort of our broad approach to this. And one of the biggest challenges when we start thinking about this space is the fact that even though we can often spot fairness-related harms in AI systems when we see them, there isn't really a one-size-fits-all definition of fairness that applies to all AI systems in all contexts. Moreover, fairness in AI is a fundamentally socio-technical challenge, meaning that it can't be approached from purely technical or purely social perspectives. So then taken together, these factors can make fairness in AI systems a pretty daunting landscape to navigate. But although there are a few easy answers, there are a variety of strategies emerging for both preventing and mitigating fairness-related harms, as well as a deepening understanding of this challenge throughout society. So today, as I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Microsoft's approach to fairness in AI systems. And of course, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to keep this brief, but feel free to follow up with me afterwards if you want to learn more. So one thing I do want to note is the following. If you've seen anything about fairness in AI, you've probably seen the word bias get used left, right, and center, often as a catch-all way to describe any kind of unfair behavior of AI systems and any possible causes of unfair behavior. In this talk, though, I'm actually going to avoid using the word bias wherever possible. And this is because the word bias can mean so many different things to so many different communities. So for example, we have statistical biases, we have societal biases, and even within the societal biases, there are so many different sorts. So instead, I'm going to talk about the fairness-related impacts that AI systems can have on people. So in other words, specific types of fairness-related harms. And the reason I'm going to do this is that this precision has proven to be super useful for us at Microsoft in disentangling who might be harmed by a system and in what specific ways, as well as suggesting different strategies for prevention and mitigation of those harms. So with that, I want to walk you through the different types of fairness-related harms that we focus on at Microsoft when we're tackling this challenge. Broadly speaking, there are 5 different types of harms that can be caused by an AI system. So first of all, there's allocation, then quality of service, stereotyping, demeaning, and overall underrepresentation. And I want to run through each of these different 5 types of harms because I think it's helpful for getting to this level of granularity when we are thinking about different prevention and mitigation strategies. So what I'm going to do is, as I run through them, I'm going to start with allocation, but I want to note that these types are not mutually exclusive. It is possible for a single AI system to exhibit more than one type of harm. And in fact, many of the examples that I'll show you could have been used to illustrate one or more of the other types as well. All right, so first, allocation. So a bunch of media stories have focused on high-stakes decisions where AI systems are used to allocate opportunities or resources in ways that have significant negative impacts on people's lives. So for example, Amazon abandoned its automated hiring system after finding that it amplified the existing gender balance in the tech industry by withholding employment opportunities from women. Quality of service harms are all about whether a system works as well for one person or one group of people as it does for another, even when no opportunities or resources are extended or withheld. So here, for example, researchers found that 3 commercial gender classifiers had higher error rates for images of women with darker skin tones than for images of men with lighter skin tones. And I want to emphasize that, like accessibility issues, quality of service harms can raise questions about respect, dignity, and personhood. So imagine how a user might feel if a system repeatedly fails to recognize her voice, but easily recognizes those of her peers. So then we get into stereotyping. So here, a really well-known example is LaTanya Sweeney's work, which showed that online advertisements were more likely to suggest that people with Black-sounding names had been arrested, thereby reinforcing negative stereotypes of Black criminality. And again, this isn't focused specifically on opportunities or resources, and it's actually not specifically focused on how the system performs for some person or group of people, but it's focused instead on the ways that systems represent particular people more negatively than they do others. So another type of representation harms is when AI systems are actively demeaning. So here, a few years ago, Google Photos infamously mislabeled an image of a Black woman as gorillas. And this mislabeling is harmful, not just because the system made a mistake, but because it specifically applied a label that has a long history of being purposefully used to demean people who are Black. And then finally, over and underrepresentation are fairly self-explanatory, but as a concrete example, researchers at the University of Washington found that for professions with an equal or higher percentage of men than women, such as engineering, image search results were even more heavily skewed towards men than reality. And I want to emphasize that one extreme case of over or underrepresentation is when systems actually erase some groups entirely, omitting them from the representation at all. So then to recap, there are these 5 main types of fairness-related harms that can be caused by an AI system and that we typically focus on when we're thinking about fairness in AI at Microsoft. These are allocation harms, quality of service harms, stereotyping harms, demeaning harms, and over or underrepresentation harms. Again, I want to reiterate that these types are not mutually exclusive, and a single AI system can exhibit more than one type of harm, as I've tried to indicate here on this slide. And in fact, you can even see a single AI system exhibit different harms for different groups of people as well. I also want to emphasize that fairness-related harms can have varying severities. So for example, unfairly denying someone bail is a much more severe harm than labeling an image of a female doctor as a nurse. But I do want to emphasize that even relatively non-severe harms can make people feel alienated or singled out, and their cumulative impact when they happen repeatedly can be extremely burdensome and problematic. So then I want to talk next a little bit about preventing and mitigating research harms and how we think about this, again, here at Microsoft. So a couple of years ago, we came out with our Responsible AI Standard. And our Responsible AI Standard really bridges that gap between research and practice. We developed the standard over a course of many, many years. This was a process that I was involved with right from day one. So we had researchers right there at the table making sure that those perspectives were representative. And once we had an initial version, we then did a bunch of pilots, gathered feedback from both internal and external stakeholders, and from that feedback, developed this version, version 2, which we published externally. And I want to emphasize that this standard really reflects our deeper thinking on what each of Microsoft's responsible AI principles mean, drawing on latest research, but then breaking these down into concrete steps that will help our engineering teams uphold our principles. And so with that in mind, I want to tell you a bit about how the standard is structured. So how we go from a high level concept like our principle of fairness and break it down into steps that are much more actionable. So first, we have principles. So which are the enduring values that really guide how our AI systems work? Next, we have what are the outcomes that we need to secure? And these are sort of represented as goals in our standards. So what are our goals that we need to really focus on if we want to uphold our principles? Goals are then broken down into requirements. These are the steps that we must take in order to secure our goals. And then finally, we have tools and practices. So these are aids for engineering teams that can help us meet those requirements. Obviously, because this is a space that is continually evolving and really changing as we learn more about both AI systems and the ways that they can cause harms in various different ways, tools and practices is an area that we're still actually growing and evolving. And we don't have tools and practices for every single requirement yet, but we're filling in the gaps as we go. And a lot of my own research falls into this area. So translating latest ideas from research into tools and practice that practitioners can actually use when they are developing and deploying AI systems. So I want to zoom in next a little bit on goals. So the standard covers Microsoft.
Anna, just 1 more minute, please.
That's perfect.
Thank you very much.
Covers Microsoft's six AI principles, and you can see them here on these slides. The bottom two are grayed out because we actually have existing standards here that we point to rather than coming up with a new set of standards under the space of AI. I also want to note that for fairness, we have 3 goals, and these goals map back to those types of harms that I was talking about earlier. So quality of service harms, allocation harms, and then broadly speaking, representation harms, where we're calling out specifically stereotyping, demeaning, and erasing. So then very quickly, because I know we have very little time left, what does it look like to go from a goal like preventing or minimizing quality of service harms to requirements? And what I want you to take away from this slide here is that there are many requirements that teams have to actually figure out how to uphold, ranging from identifying demographic groups that might be susceptible to harms, which can involve a lot of work and typically involves us bringing in stakeholders to really dive deeper into this challenge. Next, to defining how a comprehensive evaluation might surface harms. Here we often draw in statisticians so that we're designing evaluations that can best reveal what might be going wrong. Then evaluating data sets and collecting data, all the way on to actually sharing information about different performance levels and differences with our customers. And at each of these different steps, we try to develop tools and practices to help our teams really uphold these requirements and put them in place. So I am out of time. And so where can you learn more? So there are a bunch of different resources where you can learn more about our approach in this area and some of the broader thinking behind that approach. We've made available our Responsible AI Standard, our Impact Assessment Guide, and our Impact Assessment Template. We also have a Responsible AI Toolbox that researchers and practitioners can use themselves. And you can find that on GitHub, along with example notebooks. There are also a couple of webinars that walk people through how to use them. So with that, I'm going to stop, but thank you. And again, I'm just delighted to be here today.
Thank you very much, Hannah. That shows that we should have scheduled for 2 hours, Angel. Next time, I mean, we have lots of things to share. We have lots of knowledge to share. And next time we will need 2 hours. Because for the time that we are given the voice for speak, because we with Alessandra, we spoke about it many times. We don't have voices. We don't have voices in this debate. So this time we're having the voice and we are using it, and that's why we need more time. But now I'm going to introduce our dear Elena Gil. We've been together in the launchment of the Women for Ethical AI in CSW. She shared with us a video, and it's great to have you now. We are stepping forward. First a video, now a video conference, and the next time it should be in person. So welcome, Elena, from Telefónica, and thanks Telefónica for all the support to this event.
So thank you very much, Alessandra, and the UNESCO for AI Business Council for inviting me to share Telefónica's experience. Such a relevant topic. As you say, next time will be in person. And I would like also to share a short presentation, starting to say that at Telefónica is fully committed to really it's fully committed to have a global ethical policy, and equal employment opportunities is a priority for us in our talent management process. And this includes a non-discriminatory treatment by, among others, gender, but also ethical origin, age, disability, etc. This committed is reflected in Telefónica's principle for responsible business, and is diversity and inclusion policy applicable to all the companies which form part of the group. For instance, incorporation and retention of talent female to fight the statistics that Eleonora was saying it before. We have like public KPIs, and we have some objectives to achieve, as you can see in the slide, including to reach 33% female executives by 2024, or eliminate the pay gap. We also are participating in more than 100 initiatives worldwide to promote equality in our sector. Mujeres for Tech, Girls Love Tech, and you name it. So focusing more in today's topic, artificial intelligence, we have seen that it's an essential technology for the evolution of our productive, but also educational, environmental, social system. But however, as we have seen, its design and the use is not risk-free. So Telefónica has taken the lead within the private sector with a responsible AI by design approach. And we defined in 2018, so 5 years ago, some ethical principles for AI to be applied in the company. These 5 principles state the values, the commitments, and the boundaries that are applicable, as I said, to all the companies whenever we develop or we use AI products. What are these principles? We are committed to develop an AI that is fair, so not leading to discriminatory impacts, that is also transparent and explainable, that is human-centric, that has privacy and security by design, and also these principles is important that are applying not just to us, but also to the partners and third parties we work with. We have also developed a 3-tier approach, AI governance model approach, to implement these principles and to address the issue of putting them into practice in the businesses. The first one is create awareness and training for our employees, so to ensure that these AI-related professionals understand the problems at stake. And to capacitate the employees at Telefónica, we have developed some courses related to AI and ethics that are accessible to all the employees through the standard corporate training portals in 3 languages, in Spanish, in English, and in Portuguese. And depending on the profile of the employee, they can access to a light course or also to more complete courses. The second part is each of the principles is decomposed in a set of questions. So for all the products and services that use AI and big data, the responsible manager needs to complete a self-assessment questionnaire where for each principle, for each of these 5 principles, several questions must be answered. And with that, the potential damage or the potential risk and the degree of compliance to the principle is assessed. And whenever it's appropriate, there will be also a set of recommendations. And finally, we have established a governance model that promotes a self-responsible approach and that defines who is responsible for what and sets up an escalation process that includes an AI ethics committee. And actually right now we are approving in the group a new AI legal regulation that is including some aspects such as the generative AI. Our methodology includes some technical tools that allow to automatically check certain characteristics of the data sets and the algorithms. We are using both in-house and external tools that are mostly open source. And some of the tools relate to privacy-enhancing technologies such as anonymization, or as we can see in the slide right now, in a in-house developed tool to detect algorithm discrimination against protected group. So with this post-processing bias mitigation, we can first detect, for instance, gender biases. We can mitigate them, and we can also understand the trade-offs between the performance of the model and the fairness. We are also developing a global model to address another AI issue, that is explainability, transparency, so to deal with the use of the black box algorithms. This model is named Explainability Artificial Intelligence over Graphs, and it has been developed as well in-house by our expert teams. And we are in the process of making it open source and available for the use and evolution as users and other developers. And this model, this particular model, calculates for each sensitive variable a fairness score based on 3 variables: independence, separation, and sufficiency, using a different definition of fairness from a more to less restrictive. And of course, we are constantly evaluating new external tools, especially related to bias, discrimination, and explainability. And we have a community of experts that study and recommend the inclusion of new tools. So finally, I wanted to share with you a couple of examples of the type of issues that where Telefónica's AI ethics committee is involved as part of our AI governance model for both for internal and external uses. For internal use, our HR department, our people's department, or ask the committee to check and mitigate gender bias on the recommendation engine for internal vacant positions. And as an example of external use, we did the same with an external project for a regional government to understand and improve employability of citizens. So again, thank you very much for letting me share with you how we are addressing Telefónica these bias and gender inequalities in AI systems. This is a very active area of research with new tools appearing at a rapid pace, and therefore these kind of events are essentials to exchange experiences and learn from each other to promote a fair and ethical AI. So thank you very much for inviting us and letting us share our experience.
Excellent, Elena. Amazing. This is amazing. What you're doing is amazing. We started with difficult numbers, with hard numbers. Then we heard what UNESCO is doing in order to deal with this, what INRI is doing to deal with this, what Microsoft is doing, what Telefonica is doing. And then I think that it's been amazing because we can see the light at the end of the tunnel now with these things that we are all doing together. So I now want to give the floor to my dear Angel Melguizo, who is the head of this business council and who has organized the event. So Angel, thanks for inviting us and for giving us the opportunity to share the information.
No, thank you very much, and greetings from Bogota Airport. I'm not in the Bay Area, and this is not a hidden message for platforms to join this AI ethical agenda, or it is. You decide. But it was great to have you guys. It was amazing. Noted 1 hour for the expertise that was on this panel was not enough. We will make sure, obviously, that we update and upload all your contents, and we upload the video, and we will plan for some activities. But let me just close with a general question, okay? Because now all of us are convinced that this is a policy agenda, a technical agenda, an economic agenda, a business agenda that we have to pursue. But when we speak to some others who are not so convinced, and we say we have to be proactive in terms of fighting biases, or as Hannah said, fighting fairness, harmful practices, sometimes they say, no, if you regulate, if you do these things, you're gonna kill innovation. Excuse number one. Excuse number two, no, don't bother with my AI development because it is too complicated. You're not gonna understand it and you're gonna spoil it. Excuse number three, actually my AI is not so risky. I know some others are risky, but mine is not. And fourth, yeah, okay, it's a bit risky, but I will fix it afterwards. So just in 45 seconds each, how would you respond to those who still have to be convinced that this is not just to make AI more ethical, but is to make it more responsible, sustainable, and effective? How do you respond to this, let's say, agnostic more positions? And obviously, thank you very much for being here, all of you.
Okay, I'll get started. Thanks for the big question. So I always say, do we really need regulation to tell us what's the right thing to do is? We are practitioners. As Hanan has said, as Elena has said, we are every day dealing with those systems and questioning possible consequences. And it just takes the ability to ask the question, are our assumptions enabling fair and equitable outcome for all the users that are going to use this technology, and having a diverse team to challenge the assumption that we use when we develop those systems. So fixing afterward has been a principle that in tech we have applied for many years, but we have never worked with a technology that touches billions of people. We have seen in few months ChatGPT reaching more users than what Facebook or other previous platforms have reached in years, without really understanding the consequences or how our creative teenagers are experimenting and using this technology, and we don't even understand the consequence and the possible use of this technology, which is quite powerful. So as practitioners, we don't need to wait for regulation. It starts with all of us. It's a shared leader responsibility to actually question what we are doing and think about, is there a better way?
I was slowly raising my hand. Thank you. I cannot agree more with what Alexandra just said. I mean, there are so many evidences. I mean, so many evidence. And meanwhile, with respect to the regulation, I mean, the European Union proposed this AI Act which seeks some way to harmonize rules, right, on AI systems, I mean, across the globe. I mean, there's a definition of general purpose AI, I mean, to accommodate this generative AI trend that is not so trivial, right? So I mean that, and I cannot agree more with what Alejandra just said, that we need to take care, we need to insist, I mean, we need to be consistent in the way that we seek for this and to promote these trustworthy systems. And there's no other way that to take care about these issues of technical issues and ethical issues of those systems, right? So that's my take.
I like all the time to speak with women because you tend to be optimistic, at least more than I am. So I hope this evidence-based thing that we are pushing is really as powerful as some other forces. So just last round with Hannah, then with Elena. Hannah, you just released also with your white paper. It has very precise ideas for what to regulate from scratch and what just to apply and make sure that existing rules apply. Just a last word from you and we wrap up with Elena.
Yeah, so I'll keep this really brief. And I think you were asking about how do we convince people who are not yet convinced? And really, for me, it comes back to the fact that this is good business sense. At the end of the day, if you have AI systems that are underperforming for particular groups of people or representing them in ways that make them feel underserved or undervalued or alienated, you're missing out. You're missing out on customers. You're missing out on some part of the market share. And so I think it's really important to keep in mind that this is about doing the right thing, but it's also about making good business decisions as well, making sure that you really are serving people as best you possibly can.
Exactly. Either you are convinced by your values or also by your markets, clients, funds, investors. This is the way forward. Elena, I think you have quite a similar position.
Yeah, very similar. This great session. I'm also optimistic, and at Telefonica, we believe that it's possible and it's necessary to develop an AI that is ethical. And actually, as you say, our B2B customers, our employees are increasingly demanding that. We think that regulation is important, of course, but it's also important that in companies we have principles, and that, as I mentioned, that first we make our employees aware of the risk on dealing with AI, that we have the right tools to mitigate the impacts, and that we have diverse and multidisciplinary teams that are working with algorithms and AI systems. And with all these components, we truly believe that we will be able to develop an AI that it has a lot of impact in the company and in the society, but that it also ethical.
So with that, thank you very much. This is the idea. This is the purpose of this Business Council on AI and Ethics, to have at the table, leading the leading minds on this topic. It's clear that the many leading minds are women. So let's hope that this is not an exception, that this is a rule, and this is a business council which is open to some other colleagues, also from some places like in my background, because we want to really make a difference. So thanks a lot, and with your permission, Eleonora, we'll wrap up here. People have been patient just to wait these 4 extra minutes. I think they were totally worthwhile, and we will upload the material and we'll see you in a month with a topic to be decided, but as relevant probably as this is. So thank you very much and see you in a month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.